my father.
Hello, I'm Tim.
I'm Chris.
I'm Sarah.
And we're approaching that most wonderful time of the year, Halloween. So it's time to focus on some horror movies. This time out, we take a look at one without tons of gore or special effects, but which remains a very classic and very creepy haunted house movie, The Changeling.
Within this old house live two residents. One of them is John Russell, composer, professor. The other has been dead for over 70 years.
Whatever it is trying desperately to communicate. What is it in that house, Claire? What is it doing? Why is it trying to reach me?
What do you want from me?
The Changeling, an experience beyond total fear.
The Changeling centers on John Russell, a composer and music teacher who relocates to Seattle following the tragic deaths of his wife and child in a car accident. He rents a mansion from the local historical society, but the house seems just as troubled and traumatized as he is. Strange sounds and poltergeist activity drive Russell to dig into the secrets hidden behind the mansion's walls. Something or someone in the house cannot rest, and won't let Russell do so either unless he helps it perform its sinister agenda. Since this is an older one, we are going to be talking full spoilers on this one, so be warned, you probably want to see the movie before listening to the rest of the podcast.
Spoiler alert.
So, guys, this was your first time seeing the movie. What did you think, and what had you heard about before seeing it?
I hadn't heard much. I always remember seeing the cover box on the shelves of Blockbuster and other video stores and just looking at it and going, creepy cover art with wheelchairs always seems to be an eye catcher. And not really knowing much about it, but hearing that it was great, I just really wanted to see it, and I wasn't disappointed. It's a beautiful movie for 1980, especially watching it on DVD. And it's amazing to see, a more recent horror movie having so many others since it that have been popular recently, which we'll get into, borrow so much theme, setting, score, storyline, twist, right from this movie. So it was pretty great to see it, and I really enjoyed it. Very creepy. Sarah?
I'd never heard of it. If anything, I was going to get confused with the Angelina Jolie movie.
What'd you think?
I liked it. I was a little confused, but probably because I was falling asleep.
It is a bit of a complex film if you're kind of drifting in and out.
Sarah gets tired easily.
Well, thankfully, there's at least a couple loud noises in the second half of the film to keep you going.
Yes.
I remember seeing this as a tiny child, but it's funny, I don't remember a lot of the plot, just particular images or sounds, like the knocking noises, the shot of the metal against the painting bouncing, the kid in the bathtub, and especially that last shot of the burned out remains of the house and the music box playing. And I didn't know what movie it was, just all these random images in my brain for years, and they haunted me, like, what was this? And then finally seeing it, it all clicked in, oh, this is the movie.
Like the movie was trying to draw you back towards it?
But, yeah, it is incredibly effective. It's incredibly effective, and it's interesting just to see it compared to modern movies where, there's almost no real special effects, barely any gore. You barely see any blood in the movie except for a couple very notable exceptions. Just mood and atmosphere and good writing and great acting from everybody involved. And it really all just combines to get under your skin. It was released on March 28th, 1980 in both America and Canada. It is a Canadian production. The budget was about $7,600,000 Canadian, which translates to just under $7 million for American dollars. In America, it only made about $5.3 million. But in Canada, it actually won Best Picture and 7 other awards at the Genie Awards, which is basically the Canadian Academy Awards.
Oh, wow.
It won for Best Performances by Foreign Actor and Actress for George C. Scott and Trish Van Devere.
It's so weird with Canada being right over a border.
I know, but still foreign actor and actress.
Foreign actors.
Won Best Adapted Screenplay, Best Art Direction, and very key, Best Cinematography.
Which, that would win now.
Definitely.
Right? It's one of those kind of movies where if you didn't see the way the people were dressed, you could easily mistake that for a movie shot in the last 10 years.
Well, except for the young people, actually. Even the way most people dress in the movie is pretty timeless. Let's get into that cast. Of course, in the lead, we have George C. Scott as John Russell. Scott is a legend. Everybody knows him from Patton, General Turgidson in Dr. Strangelove, Anatomy of a Murder, The Hustler, tons of roles. For horror fans, though, he's probably better known as being the bad guy in Firestarter, Rainbird.
That's right.
And filling in for Lee J. Cobb in the third Exorcist movie. It's interesting, though, seeing him here. Scott is just an intense acting presence, and he's mostly known for these kind of hard, rigid type of roles like Patton. And here he gets a real change of pace. He gets to play a much more sensitive character.
Incredibly sensitive. You feel a lot for him, and that drive of his, it's like, starts learning a little bit, especially when he thinks it's a little girl. Mm-hmm. Turns out that no, it's this other kid that no one really knew about, but you can see that sentimentality of, maybe this is, almost like, could it be my daughter reaching out to me or something like that.
This little girl, Cora, was killed in the street. It was an accident, almost the same as Kathy. What is it in that house, Claire? What is it doing? Why is it trying to reach me?
John.
Is it because of my daughter? I can't go through all this again.
Yeah, I mean, the death of a child strikes him particularly because of what he's been through. And I mean, the fact that we get to see the character, openly crying, or after he has that moment in the seance just fainting dead away, it's not something you usually see from a horror movie protagonist in general, much less from Scott. Next we have Melvin Douglas playing Joseph Carmichael, or at least the apparent Joseph Carmichael. He won Oscars for his roles in HUD and Being There, and he's been in a couple of horror movies in the past. The Vampire Bat way back in the 30s with Fay Wray and Lionel Atwill. Roman Polanski's The Tenant, and his last film after this, at least his last finished film, was Ghost Story, kind of along the same lines. At first it seems like he's being set up as kind of the heavy, as the villain, but I do think he comes across as kind of a tragic character.
Right. And almost, you get the people in the Historic Society that the movie kind of sets you up with this conspiracy, but it's almost like they're just keeping it under wraps because he knows that there's something not quite right there, but it's not keeping it under wraps for any real... Once confronted with it, it's not like it turns into I need to stop this. It's like, no, I just sent a police officer by because this guy is kind of meddling in my shit. And it wasn't really as negative as it may have seemed originally.
Yeah, I like how the movie, it's part ghost story, part mystery, and then it comes into this almost late 1970s conspiracy thriller. But when it gets to it, he's just another politician who thinks this guy's out to make a buck on him.
Right.
There's also this subtle idea that in the big confrontation between Russell and Carmichael, he suggests that Carmichael knew somehow under the skin that something was wrong.
I've been dealing with vermin like you for years. You wait your chance, then you come in with a story that's so patently incredible.
Truth terrifies you, doesn't it? It's the truth. It won't be buried.
Get out.
None of this belongs to you.
Get out of here with your filthy lies.
I should have gone to that dead child. You suspected something was wrong all your life. You're not Joseph Carmichael. You're the beneficiary of the cruelest kind of murder. Murder for profit.
No!
And this idea that he's, as he says, used to vermin like him causing trouble makes you wonder, okay, what else is in this guy's
what are the skeletons, quote unquote?
Yeah, like maybe he did know that there were other things his father was up to, darker things, and didn't want to confront that, and he would just pay people off to, shut up, make it so he didn't have to look into any of that.
Right. Because the father was obviously a bastard.
Yes.
Right, that's pretty clear.
But he clearly wants to believe that, no, my father was a good man. Probably because he knows how that would reflect on him otherwise.
Right.
Think about it.
But would he know that's not even his real father, though?
That's the question. Is it just a matter of denial that he wants to believe that, yes, that was my father? All that stuff he said about how he was a loving man, is that true? Was he loving to this son because this was the strong, healthy one that would get him what he wanted?
Where was the mother?
Mother had died.
The mother had died in childbirth. So.
Oh, okay.
And this idea that, now he has to confront this horrible thing that's been done in his
name. No one wants to confront that in your 90s or whatever it was, right? And it with our ending there, which we can get into in more detail, it's almost like the ghost is kind of leading him there to kill him, right? But his spirit walking through the house and him even kind of standing there, he doesn't look afraid or scared. It's almost like, yeah, I'm accepting this.
It's like resigned.
Yeah,
he
it's
didn't die in the house. He died in his own house.
He died in his own house, but the house, remember, we saw the police officer's head smashed through the mirror when the car got flipped. It's like they're being brought to the house and off.
Or what it did to Russell, where it grabbed him and showed him what had happened in that room.
Yes.
It feels like it's forcing Carmichael to confront it finally.
Yes. And maybe just confronting it kills Carmichael, and it's not even the kid necessarily doing it.
Yeah, it almost feels like somehow it's almost a suicide in a way.
Yes.
But also, not only just this horrible crime, but the idea that you aren't you, that everything you've built yourself up to be, especially, a politician who's got to have some ego to do what he does, to finally
it's all
find out
because of this one moment.
and it's all a lie, that he was just some random kid plucked out of nowhere for this. Not for any particular reason or any talent, just because he fit the bill.
Pretty heavy stuff for a horror movie.
Definitely.
You know what I mean? Like, right, they really don't go here normally, right?
Not really. They usually focus on just kind of keeping you jumping in the seat. This one managed to pull off that and this at the same time. Next we have Trish Van Devere as Claire Norman. She was the wife and now she's the widow of George C. Scott. They acted together in 6 films, including The Last Run, Day of the Dolphin, and The Savages Loose. And Scott also directed on the stage. I kind of like how they don't really push it into an outright romance in the movie. You can feel there's this great sympathy between the two characters, but it never actually just goes straight into that. It's almost quiet and understood.
It's very realistic, where you know what I mean, like this is like a companion almost to help him through, and yeah, you can tell there's feelings between the two of them, but this whole movie actually acts as like, it's not giving you the full story, right? Like a horror movie nowadays would have had the kid do what he needed to set out for, and then there would have been that beat of, oh yeah, and then we're going to see George C. Scott in his house 5 years from now, and a music box is going to open and turn on. It'll be some wink. And no, you know what? The way this movie works, it's like, you know, this is closure for George C. Scott maybe, and closure for the ghost.
Right.
And maybe the rest of this guy's life is going to be happy. We don't get to really know.
That'll get a little interesting when we get into the true story.
Do they ever say exactly what point or what she is in the story? Is she like a caretaker of the house, or
well, she
was
worked
a
for the
member of the
Historical
Historical
Society.
Society.
and just kind of hangs out with him?
Yeah.
Oh,
Well,
okay.
She kind of befriended, because remember, she was seemed to be the only member of the Historical Society that was unaware of any of the issues with this house.
Yeah.
And maybe
Was
it's...
she the one that supposedly pushed the papers through?
Yes.
Yeah.
She pushed the papers through quickly.
Not for any kind of sinister reason, but I think more just out of sympathy for him.
Out of sympathy for the guy. She felt bad.
Yeah, there's that great sense of that. But also, once she puts him into the house, you also get the sense she has a feeling of responsibility. She's put him into this creepy situation, and now she kind of puts herself in there alongside him as well. That scene where he brings her in to listen to the tape, and she can't even talk to him, can't listen to his theory.
The child, Joseph Carmichael. He was murdered in this house in the attic. And buried. And then an orphan.
Stop it, John, just for 1 minute, please.
The idea that, you know, they've had this house in their society and this horrible thing happened in it, and she was completely unaware, and then
Right.
pushed it on this guy by mistake. Next we have John, I'm never sure if it's Colicos or Colicos, I think it's Colicos, as DeWitt the cop. If he looks familiar, he's one of those character actors who's just been in everything. He was one of the very first Klingons on Star Trek in the episode Errand of Mercy, and he actually popped up in Deep Space Nine playing the same character like 30 years later. He was the original Gaius Baltar on Battlestar Galactica, and he was the voice of Apocalypse on the X-Men cartoon.
Oh, awesome.
He also, in terms of horror movies, pops up in Creepshow for a very brief role. He's in the dream scene in the Stephen King segment, The Lonesome Death of Jodie Verrill, the one who's very excited about cutting off fingers. This is going to be very painful. And he's just wonderful at playing villains. Here, playing a little bit more of a grounded one than he usually does. You also get the sense that he's kind of Carmichael's lapdog, and like Carmichael said, he's dealt with these kind of guys before, that he assumes he's either crazy or just out for a buck.
Well, and DeWitt's the only one that the boy outright murders.
Yeah.
Right? DeWitt just gets fucking offed. You know what I mean? Like, there's no way around that, right?
I love the subtle threat he gives Russell.
I understand you lost your wife and daughter a little while ago. Maybe it shook you up. Maybe too much. Maybe you need help.
I'd like you to leave now.
We can see that you get it. You understand what I'm saying?
Out now.
You get the sense they could really do a
Yeah, if
number
you
on
keep
if they
this
wanted
going,
to.
we can take care of you.
We can make things very uncomfortable for you, yeah. In a very brief part, we have Jean Marsh as Russell's wife, Joanna Russell. She's best known for Upstairs, Downstairs, the British show, but also popped up in Frenzy, the Hitchcock serial killer movie. Made a bunch of appearances on Doctor Who, including as Sarah King, who was one of the most kick-ass companions on there. But kids from the 80s will probably know her best from Willow as the evil Queen Bab Morna.
That's
and
right.
Return to Oz as the queen in that one. And ironically,
I never knew the bad... Oh, see, that makes so much more sense now.
She's so good at playing villains. It's kind of nice to see her play a nice character here, even if she doesn't last very long in the movie. And ironically, she played the title role in the BBC kids show The Ghost Hunter. Doesn't get a lot to do, but just even having her in that brief opening sequence gives the movie even a little bit more class. And boy, that is a horrible death scene in the opening. I mean, it's not violent, but just the idea of what happens.
The idea
with the
of
car
how, yeah,
running, pushing over them.
Very well staged. You know, just hit the helplessness, right? Because it's like the door not opening kind of is the metaphor for the fact that, you know, had you been standing in the middle of the street, you wouldn't have even been able to stop this. You know what I mean? It's just how it
probably
is.
would have been nailed too.
Yeah.
And sets the tone for his trauma for the rest of the movie. But also occurs to me all of a sudden this horrible idea of what if the door not opening wasn't exactly an accident. But the idea that this ghost from afar is thinking, "Oh,
well, remember
this
in
can
the
set this
family,
guy up for
and
later."
kind of like the cool ways the movie tries to parallel that. Right? When he thinks it's the daughter, the daughter was hit by a coal cart. You know, so it's like, oh, is this maybe this? I'm here because there's something in this house that's just like me. You know what I mean? And
or like the other woman from the Historical Society said, that house doesn't want people. Maybe it didn't. It just wanted him because it knew he was the one who could actually bring this to completion, that could get Joseph the ghost what he wanted.
She said the house didn't want people. She's mistaken. Whatever it is trying desperately to communicate. The bangings, the water taps, the broken window panes, all the glass fell outward. It had to be done from the inside. Everything that's happened has been designed to get me into that attic room.
And in a really tiny part, he's only in one scene, is Barry Morris as Dr. Pemberton, the parapsychologist who points him toward the psychic. Morse is best known as Phil Gerard, the Tommy Lee Jones part in the TV show The Fugitive, the one who was chasing Richard Kimball. And as Victor Berman from Space 1999. And he popped up in the horror anthology film Asylum. He's this English-Canadian actor, does a pretty good French-Canadian accent in this. I wish we got more of him because he's a wonderfully odd little character actor, but he only pops up in the one little scene.
We have coming here many mediums and spiritualists and so, and we test them. Now, 99% utter frauds, but the 1%, astonishing.
The movie's directed by Peter Medak, who also directed The Craze, great gangster movie there. Romeo's Bleeding with Gary Oldman. And Species 2, because, well, all right, sometimes
Species
you need
2.
a paycheck. He's also done a lot of TV work, including Space 1999 with Morse.
that was a good show.
That was a great show. I was just watching some more of that again recently. The Twilight Zone revival show from the 1980s, Breaking Bad, and you'll like this, several episodes of Hannibal. So he's
Hannibal's
still
fantastic.
Still got it.
I have a question. Who is the actress that did the medium that was scribbling?
That I'm not sure. I was meaning to check that because
she sounds like the voice of the stepmother in the Cinderella cartoon.
Interesting.
Just like her.
She looks very, very familiar.
Oh,
It's bugging me.
that's a good segue into that. We talked earlier. Do you have more actors? Because I don't want.
No, that's it.
Okay, cinematographer.
John Colicon or Coicon.
That name.
I know it's French Canadian.
Jean Coquequo.
John Coit. Actually, I think it's John.
John Coitus.
John Coit.
John Coculon. Sounds like a Star
it's French,
Trek
so I'm
villain.
sure it's not.
Welcome to Coculon.
I think it's John Coquion.
Okay.
Yeah, the cinematography is amazing. The tracking shots, which kind of suggests the presence in the house, moving around, keeping an eye on.
Right, and it
things.
starts, and a lot of the tracking shots start outside, where the internal shots of the house are static.
Mm-hmm.
It's almost like the things, kind of, the presence is
I
coming
like
back.
how he had a thing for shooting like pathways. Like
Yeah.
he'd stand at an angle so you could see down like through a door, down a hallway.
And down shots, lots of down
Like even a
shots.
Down
subtle
that
one
amazing
was
staircase. Yeah.
when you see the fake Joseph as an adult and he's standing by the case with the ship in it. He films it at such an angle that you're almost looking through the inside of the case up and out.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like I just liked all the shots where you could just see for miles and it's just weird.
Incredible, right? And it's so good. And so before that, I just wanted to make sure we got through all the technical people. Had talked earlier about the borrowing from many different movies have taken from this, and I'm sure this wasn't the first to do these kinds of things either. I mean, it is 1980. The 70s were full of horror movies like this, right?
Mm-hmm.
But the medium specifically, that entire sequence in Insidious, which is a great movie, took directly from that. You know, the automatic writing, and that sequence here, because I always thought that was very unique in Insidious. I had not seen that in a movie before until seeing this one. Equally as effective here, and Insidious plays it the same way, right? It's just the sound of the moving paper and the guy helping her, and the way they do it there is she kind of whispers it to him, and then he says it, and it kind of gives you that waiting to hear what she said. But man, did that just, it really just added to that, and then you get to hear the sequence again recorded with the ghost kid's voice. Insidious.
Oh, okay.
And then you get to hear the tape with the kid's voice, right? And it just hearing that over again, having seen what was happening in the scene, it was great.
Joseph.
Did you die in this house, Joseph?
House. My room.
Will you tell us why you are not at rest?
My father.
Joseph, did you die in this house?
My room.
How did you die? How did you die?
The other thing that I noticed was how the ring, again, Ringu and the ring, borrowing with the well and the child being murdered and dropped in the well plotline is ripped directly from this, right?
And with that the house, or in that case,
the house being built
right
over it, and that's
and the idea of this bureaucratic mix-up in that one about this adopted child that nobody really knew where it came from.
And not to say that either of those movies are bad. It's the themes are done just as well there. It's just amazing to see them so long ago.
I also have to comment on the music by Rick Wilkins. Great score, kind of a Jerry Goldsmith sound to it. I like how the main theme kind of focuses on the sadness and tragedy of it, but it doesn't take much, just a little bit of addition of strings to make that very, very creepy sounding.
And I love how it starts off mostly piano, and we hear a lot of our main character playing the piano. And then kind of one of the ways the ghost really gets to him is by him hearing or composing a song that the ghost heard from its music box, all on piano. And it all ties in very well.
Yeah, it's kind of a nice metaphor for it wants him to get its story out.
Yes.
One thing I thought was really interesting, most of these kind of movies where, okay, you have some aggrieved spirit that needs closure, and it's kind of a nice thing, okay, the ghost is at peace. Here it just seems very cruel what it does to Russell in the end, that it is basically just using him to do some somewhat sinister and creepy stuff.
It almost kind of makes him sit there and watch it.
Yeah.
And isn't kind of side from killing him. Mm-hmm. Like, it drops the chandelier on him, he moves out of the way, but it's kind of like, hey, and maybe I'll take care of this guy while I'm at it too. Yeah.
But he's pissed at him for giving the medal away.
He was pissed at him for giving the medal away, but at the same time, it brings the guy there.
But also the way that when he comes back after deciding he can't do any more, and it starts smashing everything, closing the doors, basically like a petulant child.
You goddamn son of a bitch. What is it you want? What do you want from me? I've done everything I can do. There's nothing more to do.
It's not just this child, it's this incredibly powerful and rather angry and mean-spirited force in some ways. Though the movie's set in Seattle, it was mostly shot in British Columbia with a little bit of location shooting in Seattle and New York City. The iconic house from the movie actually wasn't a real house, it was just a facade and a set of interior sets, but it's very fluid. I mean, it really feels like one long connected building.
Those sets are unfriggin' believable, and the fact that they destroyed almost all of them was pretty great.
But also with those tracking shots that seem to be kind of leading the characters around, you can see, okay, the music room is connected to the foyer, it's connected to the library.
Great geography.
And that the staircase goes up and it actually is connected to the hallways. It all feels like one big giant house. Okay, here we get to the really interesting part. Russell Hunter, who's credited with the story for this one, he's also a playwright and actually musician, claims that the story of the film is actually something that really happened to him when he was living in Denver. He was living in the Henry Treat Rogers Mansion in Cheeseman Park, an area of Denver, which has been changed to Chessman Park for the movie here. And it was exactly as it occurs in the movie. He'd hear crashing and banging noises, faucets turning on, walls vibrating and knocking paintings off the wall, stuff like that. And eventually discovered this hidden room up in the upstairs, one of the gables, with the journals and the belongings of a child and the red rubber ball. And everything about the seance, that they held a seance, found out the details of the murder of this boy, found a child's body in a well under a house with the gold medal. The difference is, though, once that there wasn't really anything involving a senator, no resolution. And
he kind of added a story to tie it all together.
Yeah, or the later screenwriters did. But Hunter says after that, the poltergeist activity actually got worse. And he eventually moved out, and it followed him. And he had to get an exorcist or a priest to exorcise his apartment, and that was the only thing that kind of stopped it. Years later, when they tore down that house, the section of the house that he had been living in fell apart unexpectedly and dropped onto a construction worker in it.
Whoa.
Now, bear in mind, this is all supposedly, most of this came out of interviews that he was giving when the movie was coming out, and there's not a lot of specifics as to
he might have been playing
who the
a little bit
psychic
of a Blair
was
Witch.
into the seance. Yeah, so nobody really knows if it's true. It's kind of become the urban legend around the movie. I tend to believe that a little bit more than I would say the Amityville Horror, which that one just feels a lot further out there.
That Amityville Horror is based on a real story?
Yes,
It's
supposedly it
supposed to be,
is, yeah.
Although it's rumored that was cooked up by the house's owners at the time and their lawyer over a bottle of wine.
Really?
Yeah.
We happen to live in a house that looks just like it, so we could do that one sometime soon.
Ooh, yeah, it does have the windows.
It does have the windows.
Shut up!
Yeah.
Going to my dad's tonight.
Now, since you guys, this is the first time you've seen it, how do you think it compares to modern movies in terms of, do you think it feels too slow? Is it still scary enough?
I wasn't scared. I
No?
wanted more things jumping out at me. Like, I didn't jump, like, ah! Like,
Well, you did fall asleep during the big jump moment when the
Did it
wheelchair
have a good
starts chasing
creepy
after
vibe
Trish
to it,
Vandermeer.
though? It kind of
it was
reminded me...
definitely creepy, but, and I hate to compare it to Paranormal Activity, but the scares in there were so much better. Like, things in Paranormal Activity that I was, like, jumping and screaming and swearing. This, I was like, huh.
I don't know.
That's creepy.
I think
That's
watching
not good.
this one with the lights off, I wouldn't want to go to sleep. It's something about being in a house. Just a wuss. That's good. But no, I mean, modern films try to get this kind of vibe, right? This like slow burn. But like I said, seeing this in a dark movie theater, this would have like a Woman in Black, like I was talking about earlier. Haven't seen the original, but the new one is very much paced like something like this. Or
Yeah, that didn't have a whole lot of jump out at you scares either.
But then we went and slept.
But it works
in
for
an
this
old
movie.
But then we went and slept in an old creepy
hotel
afterwards, and we couldn't sleep. Right, so that's all in how it goes. Right.
Yeah, it has the mood that just kind of slowly.
Because things that happen, you'd be like, "Oh, that's not good," but it never really jumped out and scared the hell out
This
of you.
movie, like that one, it'll stick with you. You'll think about it later. The Orphanage we talked about had similar things to that, and that movie also had a bigger story to play, and the same kind of reveal as this one. Like, oh, there's a lot of shit going on here, and yeah, you were kind of the person that was supposed to come here the whole time. You know what I mean?
But also, this is one of those movies that comes up with a lot of images that stick with you. The wheelchair.
The wheelchair's creepy as shit. If I ever... Session 9 did a wonderful way of sticking a wheelchair in a hallway. That was just there, from what I heard of. That was one of the few things that was like actual shot there that was just kind of left like that. And yeah, there's something about a creepy wheelchair in a room, cobwebs, and then the wheelchair coming to life and chasing people around.
Or for me, just that reveal when George C. Scott's running around shutting off the faucets and comes to that bathtub and looks down, and all of a sudden, boom, there's this
all of a sudden there's a kid in the
face it.
bathtub, yeah.
Or in some cases, just the description of scenes, like where that mother in the house where they eventually find the body is describing what her daughter saw.
She said she'd seen a boy, very small, very thin, almost gnome-like, and he was trying to come up through the floor. And he kept staring at her.
Not even seeing it, just the
Were you awake for the scene with the daughter?
Yeah.
The daughter waking up with a tear in her eye, almost catatonic, being led to the room to see the little kid in the... That scene was so modern. That was very paced, like a nowadays. And a lot of the scares came from people seeing something first.
Yeah.
Which I liked a lot. And it's kind of an earned scare when it's like... That person looks horrified. I can't wait for the movie to show me what they're seeing.
Yeah, like the big one being Trish Vandermeer just
with the
stopping
wheelchair.
in mid-sentence and staring off into space, and then John sees her and like, what is she looking at? And turns, and yeah, the reveal of the wheelchair at the top of the stairs. I also have to comment on the use of sound. I actually got to see this with your brother in a big movie theater with surround sound. And there, I mean, where you have all these whispers and the musical notes and just the creepy wind sounds coming from every direction, is really, really effective.
The kid obviously is aware, I guess, after a while that his voice shows up on a recorder, because that's the way it gets through to the guy, right? I love when she comes into the house at the end and hears it's either the kid mimicking the guy's voice, or it's some of it is stuff that didn't even happen in the house, getting regurgitated back to her as echoes, right? And that was so cool.
Well, it also gives...
You weren't awake for that.
It also gives this creepy vibe.
What do you mean?
The woman comes into the house looking for the main character.
Is this after he calls her?
No, this is when the wheelchair chases her around.
Right before that.
Right before that. And she hears, like, noises and voices and, like, arguments and people talking all throughout the house.
Oh.
And it's Russell's voice.
And it's Russell's voice.
Earlier when he was yelling at the spirit, but also when he's confronting Carmichael.
Yeah.
Which also gives this creepy idea that this ghost is listening to everything that's happening.
When he's yelling,
times.
what do you want from me?
Yeah.
Exactly.
All I can. Now, what were the initials on the journal you found? It was like CSB.
Oh, that was a little girl.
Oh.
C was the little girl, right? Corinne?
Cora.
Cora?
That's why they thought.
Oh, okay.
I just remember being, Chris Sarah.
And it was his little sister, right?
No, it had been another tenant of the house. So
Yeah.
It was a doctor who had lived there. But it was to some degree a red herring.
It was almost like the kid had found that journal and had been writing in it or something.
Well, no, it was her journal. She was the one writing in it.
Yeah, but it was in the little boy's room.
But he was in the room before she was.
That's true.
Yeah. Well, it was probably just considered a storeroom after that.
Yeah.
One thing I did notice, there are a couple of goofs in terms of camera equipment being visible. But there's one where I'm not totally sure if it's intentional or if it's a goof.
The shadow?
The shadow when he first enters that room and you see the shadow of somebody's head suddenly back away.
There's one of those, and there's also during the seance.
Oh, there is?
They have the tracking shot down the stairs, and then in the corner, it has to be intentional because the light was so deliberate. When the thing comes into the room, it's not the shadow of a camera crew. It's a shadow of a head peering into the room. So it's definitely intentional. You know?
I love little details like that.
I didn't catch that.
I love that the one room in the house that has stained glass is the room the kid was in, and it's always colored red. There was
a room like the opposite room. That
on
had
the
same
opposite side
windows,
too.
Yeah.
Okay.
But yeah, that's true. It gives that creepy.
That first one he goes into that I thought it was the room, and then he opens like a door and then leaves.
The daughter's red rubber ball, that whole thing, and it comes, as Sarah said, it came back down the stairs again after he chucks it, and it's wet. It's like that's pretty creepy.
Well, why would that happen? Is it just
the ghost grabbed it out of the water
and pulled it back? Well, it's great because all right, the water because of both the water he threw it into and also the water that Joseph died in. But also it has this double thing of not only is it the fact that the ball is back and something supernatural is going on, but you also get the sense when he drops it in the water, it's kind of his way of, all right, I have to let go of what happened to my wife and daughter.
Joseph is like,
and Joseph's
fuck you.
Like, nope, you don't get to let it go yet. Not until I'm done.
You don't get to let it go until you help me let it go. And build my ice castle. Yeah,
But again, brings in kind of the cruelty of, at the same time, while it seems like it's reaching out to him, you think, it's to help him. No, it's because it has use for him. And
right, he's just a pawn.
I mean, especially when you cut to that moment where he has the flashback to the accident and he just wakes up crying. You feel your heart goes out to him in that moment that he has to have this constantly thrown back in his face while he's living there.
And it's interesting that the lady and her daughter living in that house, it hasn't bothered them before. Do you know what I mean? Because it's like, what good are they going to do me?
Yep.
Do you know what I mean? They're not going to be able to tie any of this together. Right?
Or that the seance kind of gave Joseph just enough extra power to reach out and make himself known.
Right.
Especially then when the mother's like, I need a day to think it over. And Joseph kind of helps make that decision for them.
Yeah, oh yeah. Then there's that, like you said, a little bit more power each time. And then he's able to kill the police officer. But then it's like, it really is the metal showing up and being with Carmichael. It gives him the ability to kind of transport Carmichael to the house and take care of him.
And the killing of the police officer is kind of a big deal because, I mean, usually in these movies, in kind of realistic ghost movies, the ghost doesn't really harm anybody, or it can't harm anybody. There are limits to it. That kind of is a sudden break of, nope, this ghost can do this. It has power enough to harm and kill people if they get in the way.
And it very much, with the mirror and everything, is letting Russell know.
Yeah.
Hey, you know what I mean? I just helped you, but I could also hurt you.
To the point where he's even stabbed by one of the little shards in his neck. And his reaction when he hears from Claire, when Claire actually calls him on the phone and tells him that look of shock he has of just like, oh, God.
Oh, what have I gotten myself into now?
Or the fact that in the end of the movie, we're never given a scene of him at peace with her or kind of...
Right, it ends with our ghosted piece.
It ends with him outside of Carmichael's house just looking exhausted and kind of spent and horrified by what's happened in the past, month or so.
When did she call him?
She calls him right after the cop dies because he isn't aware that the cop has died yet. He just saw his face in the mirror.
And I love that reveal of the car on its roof in the middle of the road, no other cars nearby, with just that perfect hole right through the windshield so you can see his dead staring face.
It's like, what caused the hole?
His head.
Through the whole movie, I kept listening to you going, oh my God, with, not special effects or anything, just reveals
Cameras
like that.
and reveals. Yeah. It was a gorgeous movie.
Yeah. I wish, more movies kind of use that type of style and technique and craft to make scares rather than just things jumping out at you and musical stings and stuff. Seems kind of rare. Like, Ty West is one of the only filmmakers I can think of who regularly does that type of thing. Should we jump to favorite scene?
God, there's many. My favorite... There's a lot. I like the ending sequence. I like the ending sequence in the house with the lit up banister and everything happening there. Just it might be cliched to say the ending of the movie is my favorite part, but I have to say nowadays you expect, a big effect shot or a big standoff at the end, and I didn't. After the way this one played out, I really wasn't sure where it was going to go. If they were just going to end with like a slow burn, just a couple of people having a little tiff somewhere, or, maybe Carmichael and Russell fending it off in the house, and then objects around the house causing issues. But no, this goes on, this is my power, and this is what I'm capable of doing. And I really, really dug that. My second favorite scene from that was when they're actually finding the kid in the well. Everything with the daughter, seeing him under, what we talked about before, coming into the room and seeing Joseph in the well, and them digging it up, and that shot from right up in the ceiling looking down. There was just something otherworldly about it, and the way that it was shot.
I think I found something. What is it? It's a hand. What? It's a hand.
Both of those sequences are favorites. And I'd say any tracking shot in the house. Any tracking shot in that house. I know this is being kind of vague, but it's just that they're all as good as one another. Yeah.
A couple of points on those. I like how, with that ending, the movie's been kind of subtle, especially compared to movies these days. I think it kind of earns that operatic ending, that it goes big with this giant colossal fire and the whole house collapsing. Also, one other sound note in terms of that scene where the daughter is looking down at Joseph in the water. I love how when she's just kind of hypnotized and staring at him, you hear her mother calling her, but it sounds like it's been recorded underwater, even though she isn't underwater. Almost like it's reaching out.
Like he's putting her there.
Yeah, he's forcing her to feel what he's been going through, which also kind of harkens back to The Ring to some degree. Yes. Sarah, how about you?
I liked the scene with the medium or the psychic, whatever she was, doing the writing. And then kind of how they have the big, it's hectic and crazy, and she's scribbling, and everyone's all heightened. And then the next scene, they're just gone.
Yeah, like, I am done with this
That's
place.
Good.
Thank you.
Out.
Thank you for playing. We're out.
But like you said, it was a lot like Insidious, but it's just cool.
And that one solitary shot of him at the table, just kind of looking over the scene where this whole thing has happened.
And you kind of get mad at him because he keeps replaying the same stuff, and you're like, keep going, there's more! I know it!
But he's just so stunned by actually being able to hear this voice.
That harkens.
We get it, you hear it, move on!
That harkens
see what else it says.
To Paranormal Activity, too. What Sarah was saying, that's a movie that borrows, that is this genre, just done as found footage. But I like the idea of this one that, the medium, all they're really going to be there for is to tell you what's going on. And then literally it's like, no, there is no otherworldly person that's going to be able to help you through this. Whatever you got yourself into, it's latched onto you and you got to deal with it. And that's played through in Paranormal Activity with it, kind of a scene I love that's never in these movies, of them actually trying to get the medium back to help them. And the medium just keeps like, you're fucked.
Yeah,
just like, I'm not even coming in the house.
He won't even go in the door. It's like, I'm done. Sorry.
Yeah, but in this one, it's just kind of that abrupt. Like she says, sorry, no, this is all they're really here for. It's not the poltergeist style medium that comes back and it's the one that saves you. You know what I mean?
There's not this sense of, okay, this person knows what has to be done and will guide us through it.
And that's the other thing. There isn't any, even the people that you seem to think are a conspirator or someone covering all this up and know about the ghost. And no, it's really just, we're not really quite sure what's going on here, but there's something weird with this house, and there's some cover-up that the senator doesn't want anybody to know about. But at the end, they were all kind of innocent, in all of it.
Well,
and
they certainly knew creepy stuff happened in the house,
Yeah.
but I mean, like most people, they're like, we just don't want to deal with it.
there isn't someone that just knows, and I'm going to tell you the story about that ghost. I saw him one night. You don't get any of that,
But yeah, my favorite scene was the seance, too. One of the interesting things about that idea of, the psychic event she has to leap into it is also the fact that Joseph specifically wants to talk to John. That John is the chosen one who has to help him out through his weird little quest of justice.
Help, John.
Yeah, John, help.
For me, it's the editing of that scene, how it starts off very long, slow, paced shots with her, voice droning on, just, did you die in this house, Joseph? And very slowly picks up. The cuts get faster and shorter.
Is there someone here you wish to communicate with?
John. Help. 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 John. Help. Help. Help.
The way that's put together and edited is just masterful. It's incredible. And you really, all you're seeing is this old woman writing on a couple sheets of paper, but it really gets your adrenaline pumping watching it. So, recommendation-wise, what would you recommend for this?
I'd recommend The Orphanage. We've talked about that a lot. I don't know if a lot of people out there have seen it. I'd also recommend,
Insidious.
Insidious, absolutely. We talked about that. And Session 9.
Yeah.
Just because that kind of has a reveal similar to this with people digging, but it's a guy digging that doesn't really know he's digging. It isn't really the malevolent force that's directing him to listen to these tapes, and it's played out so well. For anyone listening to this that's not from the area, it's a great film to check out because it takes place in an old mental hospital in Danvers State, which is no longer in existence. It's been converted over to apartments. And growing up in this area, that was always the creepy, old story. I believe H.P. Lovecraft that's one of the places he supposedly modeled Arkham after, if I'm not mistaken. It was just cool to see a movie filmed there that really called it Danvers State and tried to make it feel like a story with a patient that could have existed at that place. And it's great and a good piece of New England filmmaking and history.
My grandmother actually used to work there.
And my mother, too. What about you, Sarah?
Paranormal Activity 1 through 1,000,000.
Wherever they're at now.
I've lost track.
By the time of the release of this recording, they'll be
I really don't
5.
have many because I haven't seen very, very horror movies.
Okay.
So to me, they're all the same.
I think 5 is next year, actually.
Yeah.
What's the one that's this year? This one this year?
Yeah, it's in May or April.
What's the spin-off one?
That already came out, the marked ones.
We have to see that.
Yes.
Yeah, it's on my Netflix queue, too. Well, you already took one of my recommendations, damn it, with The Orphanage, because it has that same level of creepiness, but also that same touch of tragedy to it. It's much more of something that's trying to convey a message to people, and has some of the scenes involving the paranormal investigators in that one have very much the same vibe. One of the other big ones I'd recommend is Exorcist 3 with George C. Scott, where though I know it's a sequel, and sequels are usually bad, and the rest of the Exorcist series isn't all that fantastic. He is fantastic in that one. He is wonderful, has this great kind of humor and warmth to him that comes across in this movie too. And also I'd throw in the original version of The Haunting by Robert Wise, which again is an incredibly creepy movie with almost nothing at all. Sound effects, great photography.
Hanging feet, I think,
in one scene, yeah. But how little they use in that one, but how much it pushes you and manipulates you, much as the characters in that movie are pushed and manipulated. I saw your eyes light up.
Well, I had one more, and I'm going to recommend it without synopsis. You just got to see it. Is The Devil's Backbone.
Oh.
Filmed by Guillermo del Toro. Mm-hmm. And that is a fine film.
Yeah, I'd almost say the Saw movies, with the way that there's all the backstory, the whole backstory with Saw himself, and then everyone he puts in a trap, there's a story and a reason why.
Well, that's something I always enjoyed about those up until the end. Now that she brings that up, it is Halloween, we can talk about them. It is the fact that the Saw movies, despite declining in how well done they were, up until maybe the fourth or fifth one, were really trying their damnedest to give you a reason to keep coming back and see them, adding to the mythology, adding to the story.
Well, and
they
trying
got
to keep it going when they kept killing characters off,
exactly.
so.
But they at least did a somewhat okay job, up for like at least 2 or 3 of them. Yeah, that's a good point.
Actually, 2 more I thought of. And they're actually both on Netflix, so you have the chance
We
to
can't help but just recommend all day long.
Well, one is The Innkeepers, which is by Ty West, who I mentioned earlier. Very much has the slow build of this movie in terms of, again, doing so much with very little. In fact, the scene with the piano in this one is kind of echoed in that movie. It's a really beautiful movie film, and one that you have to play with either the sound turned up or a really good sound system, because like this one, the use of sound in that to keep you off guard is perfect. And a really odd one is a movie called Below by David Towie, who did
one
Pitch
of my
Black.
favorites.
Yeah.
You're right, it has this same kind of, is there really anything supernatural going on for a while? And
which finds a very unique location for a haunted house movie, a submarine during World War II.
Yeah, everyone should see that. That's probably, that could very well be my favorite movie he's made. He's made a couple great ones, and that one's just...
And it's it didn't get a huge release, so it's really not very well known, but it's an excellent and creepy little movie. Okay, anything else we have to say about The Changeling before we wrap up?
Listen to our podcast. That's all I have to say.
Sarah?
He said it all.
All right, I guess that pretty much covers it. Well, that ends our conversation, but not the discussion. If you'd like to have your say about The Changeling or feel that we missed something, check out the comments section for this episode on cinemaspection.blogspot.com and start talking. Email your comments, complaints, questions, and suggestions to cinemaspection@gmail.com. You can also like our Facebook page, and if you're on iTunes and like what you hear, please subscribe to us, and if you have a moment to spare, leave us a review. We appreciate any feedback.
Ooh, feedback.
We appreciate any feedback you can offer.
And we appreciate food, too.
Food's good, too.
Food back.
Brownies, cookies, all welcome. We'll be back to discuss another movie next time. Until then, remember to keep watching closely. There's more to a movie than just what's on the screen. Good night.
Good night.
Good night.